Hello, I'm going to be reading the next chapter of The Little People. We're now on chapter 5. The last chapter, at the end of it, we had a little quiz, and the questions I asked you last time were, where does Arrietty live? Question number 2, who saw Uncle Henry? And number 3, what food did the Overmantles eat? Okay. So the answers today, from last time, the answers are number 1, Arrietty and Pod and Homily, they live under the clock. If you remember, they're called Pod, Homily and Arrietty clock. And they get their name from where they live, and they live under the big grandfather clock. So the answer to number 1 is the clock. Number 2, who saw Uncle Henry? Remember, he was the borrower, so he's Arrietty's uncle, and he was on the mantelpiece amongst all the other little figures and little things, pretty little things on the mantelpiece. And the person that saw him while she was dusting was Rosa the maid. Do you remember the only reason that she saw him was because he stood stock still after he was dusted, but then he sneezed. And she screamed the house down. Everybody could hear her. She thought one of these little figures had come to life, not knowing about borrowers, because most people don't know about them. And then the question number 3, the Overmantles, they lived in the drawing room, and the only food they ate was breakfast food. So the sorts of food you have at breakfast: toast, crumpets, or sometimes people have kedgeree. It's rice and fish. But anyway, those are the answers. Breakfast food. Okay, hope you did all right on that. Yeah, so the last time Pod, Homily and Arrietty, so Homily and Pod were telling Arrietty, they got her out of bed, remember, and were telling her all about the families that used to live in the house, the harpsichords and the Overmantles and the rain barrels, and they're telling Arrietty all about who used to live there. But Pod has some really important news to tell her, because he's been seen up in the big house by the boy. But Arrietty doesn't know yet, so they're telling her, but gently. So the next chapter, I'll start now, and we'll see how we get on with that. Okay. Your mother and I got you up, said Pod, to tell you about upstairs. Arrietty, holding the great cup, she's got some soup, remember, her great cup in both hands, looked at him over the edge. Pod coughed. You said a while back that the sky was dark brown with cracks in it. Well, it isn't. He looked at her almost accusingly. It's blue. I know, said Arrietty. You know? Exclaimed Pod. Yes, of course I know. I've got the grating. Can you see the sky through the grating? Go on, interrupted Homily. Tell her about the gates. Well, said Pod ponderously, if you go outside this room, what do you see? A dark passage, said Arrietty. And what else? Other rooms. And if you go further, more passages. And if you go walking on and on in all the passages under the floor, however they twist and turn, what do you find? Gates, said Arrietty. Strong gates, said Pod. Gates you can't open. What are they there for? against the mice?" asked Arrietty. "Yes," agreed Pod uncertainly, as though he gave her half a mark. "But mice never hurt no one. What else?" "Rats," suggested Arrietty. "We don't have rats," said Pod. "What about cats?" "Cats?" echoed Arrietty, surprised. "Or to keep you in?" suggested Pod. "To keep me in?" repeated Arrietty, dismayed. "Upstairs is a dangerous place," said Pod. "And you, Arrietty, you're all we've got, see? It isn't like Hen Dreary. He still has two of his own and three of hers." "Once," said Pod, "Hen Dreary had three of his own." "Your father's thinking of Eglantine," said Homily. "Yes," said Pod, "Eglantine. They never told her about upstairs, and they hadn't got no grating. They told her the sky was nailed up like, with cracks in it." "A foolish way to bring up a child," murmured Homily. She sniffed slightly and touched Arrietty's hair. "But Eglantine was no fool," said Pod. "She didn't believe them, so one day," he went on, "she went upstairs to see for herself." "How did she get out?" asked Arrietty, interested. "Well, we didn't have so many gates then, just the one under the clock. Hen Dreary must have left it unlocked or something. Anyway, Eglantine went out." "In a blue dress," said Homily, "and a pair of button boots your father made her. Yellow kid leather, with jet beads for buttons. Lovely they were." "Well," said Pod, "any other time it might have been all right. She'd have gone out, had a look around, had a bit of a fright maybe, and come back, none the worse and none the wiser." "But things had been happening," said Homily. "Yes," said Pod. "She didn't know, as they never told her, that her father had been seen, and that upstairs they got in the cat, and—" "They waited a week," said Homily, "and they waited a month, and they hoped for a year, but no one ever saw Eglantine no more." "And that," said Pod, after a pause, and eyeing Arrietty, "is what happened to Eglantine." There was silence, except for Pod's breathing and the faint bubble of the soup. "It just broke up your Uncle Hen Dreary," said Homily at last. "He never went upstairs again, in case he said he found the button boots. Their only future was to emigrate." Arrietty was silent a moment, then she raised her head. Why did you tell me?" she asked. "Now, tonight." Homily got up. She moved restlessly towards the stove. "We don't never talk of it," she said. "At least not much. But tonight we felt—" She turned suddenly. "Well, we'll just say it straight out. Your father's been seen, Arrietty." "Oh," said Arrietty. "Who by?" "Well, by something you've never heard of. But that's not the point. The point is, you think they'll get a cat." "They may," said Homily. Arrietty set down the soup for a moment. She stared into the cup as it stood beside her, almost knee-high on the floor. There was a dreamy, secret something about her lowered face. "Couldn't we emigrate?" she ventured at last, very softly. Homily gasped and clasped her hands and swung away towards the wall. "You don't know what you're talking about," she cried, addressing a frying pan which hung there. "Worms and weasels and cold and damp and—" "But supposing," said Arrietty, "that I went out, like Eglantine did, and the cat ate me, then you and Papa would emigrate, wouldn't you?" she asked, and her voice faltered. "Wouldn't you?" Homily swung round again, this time towards Arrietty. Her face looked very angry. "I shall smack you, Arrietty Clock, if you don't behave yourself this minute." Arrietty's eyes filled with tears. "I was only thinking," she said, that I'd like to be there, to emigrate too." uneaten, she added softly, and the tears fell. Now, said Pod, this is enough. You get off to bed, Arrietty, uneaten and unbeaten both, and we'll talk about it in the morning. It's not that I'm afraid, cried Arrietty angrily. I like cats. I bet the cat didn't eat Eglantine. I bet she just ran away because she hated being cooped up day after day, week after week, year after year, like I do, she added on a sob. Cooped up? Repeated Homily, astounded. Arrietty put her face into her hands. Gates, she gasped. Gates, gates, gates. Pod and Homily stared at each other across Arrietty's bowed shoulders. You didn't ought to have boarded it up, he said unhappily. Not so late at night. Arrietty raised her tear-streaked face. Late or early, what's the difference? She cried. Oh, I know Papa is a wonderful borrower. I know we've managed to stay when all the others have gone. But what has it done for us in the end? I don't think it's so clever to live on alone for ever and ever in a great big half-empty house under the floor, with no one to talk to, no one to play with, nothing to see but dust and passages, no light but candlelight and firelight and what comes through the cracks. Eglantine had brothers, and Eglantine had half-brothers. Eglantine had a tame mouse. Eglantine had yellow boots with jet buttons, and Eglantine did get out. Just once. Shush, said Pod gently, not so loud. Above their heads the door creaked, and heavy footfalls heaved deliberately to and fro. They heard Mrs. Driver's grumbling voice and the clatter of the firearms. Drat this stove, they heard her say. Wind's in the east again. Then they heard her raise her voice and call, Crampfell! Pot sat staring glumly at the floor. Arrietty shivered a little and hugged herself more tightly into the knitted quilt. And Homily drew a long, slow breath. Suddenly she raised her head. In the same firm voice, she said, Arrietty, supposing one day we'd pick a special day when there was no one about, and providing they don't get a cat in, which I have my reasons for thinking they won't, supposing one day your father took you out borrowing. You'd be a good girl, wouldn't you? You'd do just what you said, quickly and quietly, and no arguing. Arrietty turned quite pink. She clasped her hands together. Oh, she began in an ecstatic voice, but Pod cut in quickly. Now, Emily, we've got to think. You can't just say things like that without thinking it out proper. I've been seen, remembered. This is no kind of time for taking a child upstairs. There won't be no cat, said Homily. There wasn't no screeching. It's not like that time with Rosa. All the same, said Pod uncertainly. The risk's there. I never heard of no girl going borrowing before. The way I look at it, said Homily, and it's only now it's come to me. If you had a son, you'd take him borrowing now, wouldn't you? Well, you haven't got no son. Only Arrietty. Supposing anything happened to you or me, where would Arrietty be if she hadn't learned to borrow? Pod stared down at his knees. Yes, he said after a moment, I see what you mean. To give her a bit of an interest like and stop her hankering. Hankering for what? For blue sky and grass and such like. Arrietty caught her breath and Homily turned on her swiftly. It's no good, Arrietty. I'm not going to emigrate. Not for you nor anyone else. Ah, said Pod and began to laugh. So that's it. Shush, said Homily, annoyed, and glanced quickly at the ceiling. Not so loud. Now kiss your father, Arrietty, she went on briskly, and pop off back to bed. As Arrietty snuggled down under the bedclothes, she felt, creeping up from her toes, a glow of happiness, like a glow of warmth. She heard their voices rising and falling in the next room. Homily went on, measured and confident. There was, Arrietty felt, a kind of conviction behind it. It was the winning voice. Once she heard Pod get up and scrape for a chair. "I don't like it," she heard him say. And she heard Homily whisper, "Hush!" And there were tremulous footfalls on the floor above, and the sudden clash of pans. Arrietty, half dozing, gazed up at her painted ceiling. "Flor de Havana," proclaimed the banners proudly. "Garant citados superioras non plus ultra exquisitos." And the lovely gauzy ladies blew their trumpets, silently, triumphantly, on soundless notes of glee. So, that's the end of that chapter. So, Arrietty is going to go borrowing with her dad. He's very excited. So, questions? So, questions for the chapter we've just done. Question number 1. Who did they hear banging about with the pans upstairs? Okay. Number 2. Who got seen? Give you a clue. It was a girl. And question number 3. What did Homily say she could do next time Pod goes borrowing? So Homily said to Arrietty she could do something with Pod the next time he goes borrowing. Okay. So see you next time. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye for now. So can I view this?